blood isn't supposed to taste like honey, but Eris Valebrook's did, sweet, forbidden, and deadly. Her fingertips trembled against her lips as she tried to wipe away the metallic warmth. And then she saw it, her once blue veins now pulsing silver beneath her skin, like liquid moonlight trapped under ice. What followed was a whisper from somewhere deep inside her, a voice she'd never heard before. "Kill me before I become what you fear." The voice wasn't hers. It belonged to her wolf, the one she wasn't supposed to have. Eris stumbled against the crumbling stone wall of her quarters, breath ragged as fever burned through her body for the third night in a row. On the other hand, the border pack healers had dismissed her symptoms as omega weakness, nothing more than an orphan's fragile constitution acting up again. Deep down, she knew the truth was far worse. As the silence stretched between her labored breaths, Eris caught sight of her reflection in the small cracked mirror above her wash basin. Her silver eyes, the ones that had marked her as different since birth, now glowed with an eerie luminescence that hadn't been there yesterday. Her body moved on instinct toward the window, drawn by the pull of the waning moon hanging low in the night sky. 3 more days, she whispered to no one. 3 days until I'm 21. 3 days until whatever was happening inside her either killed her or revealed itself completely. Without warning, a howl cut through the night, not from the pack's guarded territory, but from beyond the border where rogues and outcasts roamed. The sound vibrated through her bones like a familiar song. Her chest ached as something inside her shifted, desperate to answer the call. Instead, Eris pressed her forehead against the cool glass, willing the burning beneath her skin to subside. Maybe it was fate that she'd been born different, silver-eyed and silent-wolfed in a pack that valued neither. Or maybe it was just cruel coincidence that made her an outcast among outcasts. She didn't know what scared her more, the possibility of dying before her next moon cycle or discovering what she might become if she lived. The village of Moonhaven sat on the edge of Leakin territory, a collection of stone cottages and wooden barracks housing those deemed unworthy of the inner territories. As the first light of dawn crept over the eastern mountains, Eris slipped through the silent streets, her shoulders hunched against the morning chill. With every step she took toward the edge of the village, her pulse raced with the fear of being discovered. Before she could move past the guard post, a rough hand clamped down on her shoulder. "Where do you think you're going, Omega?" The voice belonged to Garrick, a beta enforcer with eyes like coal and a smile that promised trouble. Gathering herbs for healer Marla, Eris lied smoothly, the words practiced and hollow. The truth that she'd heard whimpering beyond the border during her fevered dreams would only earn her laughter or worse, confinement. As if pulled by a string of fate, the whimpering started again, faint enough that only someone listening for it would notice. Garrick's eyes narrowed, but he released her with a dismissive shove. "Be back by midday," he ordered. "Any longer and I'll assume you've deserted. And we both know what happens to deserters." Eris nodded, resisting the urge to rub her shoulder where his grip had left a mark. The moment she crossed the border into the forest, her lungs expanded, as though the air there was somehow purer, richer with possibility. The forest held its breath around her, ancient pines towering overhead like silent sentinels. Between them, something cracked, a twig, perhaps, or something larger. Eris froze, her silver eyes scanning the shadows. As her wolf stirred, the world shifted into sharper focus. Scents became more distinct, pine and earth, deer moss and rabbit droppings, and underneath it all, the unmistakable copper tang of fresh blood. With a single glance over her shoulder to ensure no one followed, Eris moved deeper into the trees, following the scent like a trail of breadcrumbs. The tension broke when she found the source, a small wolf pup, no more than a few months old, its gray fur matted with blood from a wound along its flank. When her name left her lips a soft, Cooing sound meant to soothe, the pup's ears flattened against its head, yellow eyes wide with terror. "I won't hurt you," Eris promised, crouching low and extending her hand, palm up. As the sky darkened with approaching rain clouds, she inched closer. "Let me help." While her pulse raced, Eris pulled a strip of cloth from her pocket, one she'd prepared in case she found the source of the whimpering. The pup growled weakly, but didn't resist when she carefully wrapped the makeshift bandage around its wounded side. As fire bloomed beneath her skin, her fever returning with a vengeance, Eris gathered the small creature into her arms. The air thickened with the scent of approaching wolves, but different from her pack, wilder, stronger, more dangerous. Time stood still as a deep voice cut through the forest. "Step away from the pup, Omega." Her breath caught at the command, its power vibrating through her bones like thunder. The space between them burned with unspoken threat as Eris turned. The pup clutched protectively to her chest. Her voice trembled when she finally found it. "I was only trying to help." In the quiet that followed, Eris took in the sight of the man before her, tall, broad-shouldered, with midnight black hair and eyes like shards of blue ice. His features were sharp enough to cut glass, from his high cheekbones to his angular jaw, darkened by the shadow of a beard. Yet it wasn't his physical presence that made her heart skip, but the authority that radiated from him like heat from a flame. A beat later, recognition dawned. The insignia on his armor, a silver wolf with a crown of thorns, marked him as shadowfront, the elite warriors who patrolled the boundaries between civilized packs and the wild ones beyond. This wasn't just any wolf. This was Alpha Karen Thorn of the Irefong bloodline, the most feared commander in the Northern Territories, the wolf rumored to have torn 100 rogues apart with his bare hands. Her thoughts spun chaotically. What was an alpha of his standing doing in border territory? Alphas didn't concern themselves with forgotten outposts like Moonhaven. With his scent in the air, pine and winter, and something dangerously male, her fever seemed to intensify, crawling up her spine like liquid fire. The pup whimpered in her arms, sensing her distress. As the echo faded of his command, Karen's nostrils flared, his gaze sharpening as he studied her face. Her bones remembered him, though they had never met, as if her very marrow recognized something in him that her conscious mind couldn't name. "You're bleeding," he said, his voice lower now, rough at the edges. Eris glanced down, surprised to find blood trickling from her nose, silver-tinged and glittering in the dim forest light. As the mark tingled, a birthmark at the base of her throat that had always been just a shade darker than the rest of her skin, her soul answered some unspoken question. The wind carried his name through her mind like a caress. Karen. Shadows danced between them as she swayed on her feet, the fever making the world tilt dangerously. Her instincts surged with conflicting commands: run, stay, fight, submit. As though fate whispered instructions to them both, Karen reached out just as her knees buckled. A growl rose in her throat as his arms closed around her and the pup, his touch sending shockwaves through her overheated skin. As if the forest watched with bated breath, the alpha's eyes widened in unmistakable shock. "Silver eyes," he murmured, his gaze locked on hers. "You're the one." Her wolf pressed forward suddenly, clawing at her consciousness as if desperate to break free after years of dormancy. And she let it happen, her vision blurring as the forest around them exploded into a kaleidoscope of sensations, his scent becoming stronger, his heartbeat echoing in her ears, his arms tightening around her as everything went dark. The last thing Eris heard before consciousness slipped away was the alpha's voice, urgent and strained as he called to someone beyond her field of vision. "Get the healer. Tell no one what we've found. If word reaches the council that the last wolfsbane still lives, they'll burn this entire territory to the ground." death would have been kinder than waking to his scent. Eris floated through darkness, caught between consciousness and oblivion, while the Alpha's presence wrapped around her like an invisible chain, pine, winter, and raw power binding her to life when surrender seemed so much sweeter. And then, like a match struck in darkness, pain ignited through her veins, forcing her eyes open with a gasp that tasted of his name. Karen. The word burned on her tongue, unspoken but somehow tattooing itself across her soul. As her vision focused, Eris realized she wasn't in her quarters, or even in Moonhaven at all. The ceiling above was adorned with intricate wooden beams, carved with runes she couldn't decipher. More importantly, her body lay on something impossibly soft, her skin cooled by silken sheets that surely cost more than she'd earn in years of herb gathering. Without thinking, Eris bolted upright, only to be greeted by a wave of dizziness that had her clutching at the sheets. The moment their eyes locked, silver meeting ice blue, electricity crackled in the air between them, as tangible as a storm about to break. Alpha Karen Thorne sat in a high-backed chair beside her bed, his massive frame somehow contained in the space, like a predator forcing itself to appear smaller. As the silence roared around them, his expression remained impassive, betraying nothing of the thoughts behind those cold eyes. "You should be dead," he said finally, each word precise and sharp as a blade. Between one breath and the next, the events in the forest came rushing back, the pup, the fever, the bloodied nose, and most terrifyingly, her wolf trying to break free after years of dormancy. Eris glanced around frantically. "The pup is safe," Karen answered her unspoken question, his voice softer now, yet no less commanding. "Healed and taken to the nursery." In the stillness that followed, Eris became acutely aware of three things. She was in foreign territory without permission, her fever had broken completely, and she was wearing nothing but a thin nightgown that definitely wasn't hers. Her voice trembled when she asked, "Why am I here? Where is here?" "Shadowhold," he replied, naming the fortress that housed his elite warriors. As for why, his words trailed off as he rose from the chair, his height casting a shadow across her bed. "That's what I intend to discover." Heat ignited where they connected, racing through her veins like wildfire. Her instincts surged with new, terrifying clarity. This wasn't just any recognition. This was the beginning of a mate bond. An impossibility. A death sentence. Wolfsbane and Alpha, a combination that legends claimed could only end in destruction. As though the forest watched through the windows of Shadowhold, bearing witness to the forbidden, Karen's eyes widened in unmistakable realization. The air between them crackled with shared understanding and horror. "This can't happen," he growled, even as his hand slid to the nape of her neck, fingers tangling in her hair with possessive intent. "You'll be the death of me, little wolf." Her voice trembled when she answered, "Then why can't you let me go?" In the stillness that followed, Karen leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear as he whispered words that would change everything. "Because my wolf has already claimed you as mine, and I was sent here by my father with orders that could not be clearer." His grip tightened, not painfully, but with desperate intensity. "And the last of the wolfsbane line before she destroys us from the inside." As the mark tingled at the base of her throat, answering the call of his proximity, her soul answered with terrifying certainty. Whatever this was between them, it had already begun. The bond, impossible and forbidden, pulsed like a living thing between them. And as Karen finally, inevitably, lowered his mouth to the sensitive skin where her mark throbbed, Eris realized that death might indeed have been kinder than this exquisite, impossible torture of wanting what would surely destroy them both. His teeth against her throat should have terrified her. Instead, Eris melted into the forbidden touch, her body betraying every instinct for self-preservation as Karen's mouth pressed against her pulse point. Not quite a bite, not yet the claiming mark that would seal their fates, but a promise of what could be. And then, as if burned by her very skin, he wrenched himself away, chest heaving, eyes wild with conflict. "This is madness," he growled, putting distance between them with visible effort. "My father didn't send me to find a mate. He sent me to eliminate a threat." From there, an uncomfortable silence stretched between them, filled only by their ragged breathing. Despite his words, Eris could feel him, not just physically present, but somehow inside her, a tether forming between their wolves that shouldn't exist. "If I'm such a threat," she said, finding courage in the connection she couldn't explain, "then why can't you finish your mission?" The tension broke as Karen prowled the perimeter of the room like a caged beast, his powerful frame vibrating with barely contained energy. "Trust me, I've been asking myself the same question since I found you." Without warning, he spun toward her, closing the distance in 2 long strides. His hand shot out, fingers wrapping around her throat, not squeezing, but holding her in place as his thumb traced the mark at the base of her neck. "This," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "is why." As the sky darkened outside the window, his eyes never left hers. "Your birthmark. It's not just any mark, it's the sigil of the wolfsbane. But more importantly," his touch softened, almost reverent now, "it's the mirror image of my own." Her breath caught as he tugged down the collar of his tunic, revealing a mark at the base of his throat, identical to hers, but inverted, like 2 pieces of a broken whole. The moment their eyes locked again, something cracked between them, the tension giving way to a different kind of intensity. "What does it mean?" she asked, though deep down, she already knew. Instead of answering, Karen released her and moved to the window, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the gathering dusk. "It means I need to keep you hidden while I figure out what to do." The wind carried his scent to her, pine and winter, but now laced with something else, uncertainty. Fear, even. From an alpha who, by all accounts, feared nothing. Her voice trembled when she spoke again. "How long have you known?" "About me, about what I am." "I didn't," he admitted, still facing away. "Not until I saw you. My father died 6 moons ago. His last command was clear: find and eliminate the last wolfsbane before she comes of age." As fire bloomed beneath her skin at this revelation, Eris found herself moving toward him, drawn by something stronger than caution. "Why would he send you specifically?" Karen turned then, his face half in shadow, half illuminated by the fading light. "Because Irefang blood is supposedly immune to wolfsbane influence. My bloodline was created to hunt yours." The space between them burned with the irony of their situation, hunter and prey, now bound by something neither could control. Her heart skipped a beat as understanding dawned. "But you're not immune," she whispered. "Not to me." A beat later, Karen closed his eyes, a muscle working in his jaw. "No, I'm not." Time stood still as they absorbed this impossible truth. Her thoughts spun with questions, with fears, with the growing awareness that her 21st birthday, just days away, might mark not just her coming of age, but the full awakening of whatever power slept in her blood. Without thinking, Eris reached out, her fingers brushing against the back of his hand. As though fate whispered warnings neither could hear, they both gasped at the contact, a jolt of electricity passing between them, painful and exquisite at once. Her instincts surged with newfound clarity. This wasn't just attraction. This was recognition on the most primal level, her wolf calling to his across bloodlines that should have been incompatible. A growl rose in his throat as he captured her hand, his grip firm but not painful. "This can't happen, Eris. Do you understand?" If the council learns I've found you and didn't kill you immediately, they'll execute us both." As though the forest watched through the windows, bearing silent witness to their dilemma, Eris felt a calmness settle over her. "Then why are you hiding me instead of killing me?" The air thickened with unspoken truths as Karen's thumb traced circles on her wrist, his touch at odds with the harshness of his words. "Because I need to understand what's happening." And he hesitated, vulnerability flashing across his features. "Because I can't." Her name hung in the air between them, charged with meaning. In the quiet that followed, Eris finally asked the question that had been forming since she'd awakened in his fortress. "What happens now?" As the echo faded of her words, a commotion erupted in the corridor outside, voices raised in alarm, footsteps pounding against stone. Karen tensed, immediately positioning himself between Eris and the door. Her bones remembered ancient fear as the door burst open, revealing a warrior whose armor bore the same insignia as Karen's. The man's eyes widened briefly at the sight of Eris before he snapped to attention. "Alpha, forgive the intrusion," he said, breathless with urgency. "Riders approaching from the east. They bear the High Council insignia." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Her chest ached with sudden terror, not for herself, but for the Alpha who now stood protectively before her. "How many?" Karen demanded. "A small contingent. 6, maybe 7. Led by Commander Varian." Something inside her shifted at the name, though she couldn't say why. Shadows danced between them as Karen's posture changed, authority radiating from him in waves. "Prepare the Great Hall. Tell them I'll receive them shortly." His voice left no room for question. "And Thorn, not a word about our guest. To anyone." The warrior saluted and disappeared, leaving them once again in tense silence. As if the world narrowed to this moment, this choice, Karen turned to Eris, his expression unreadable. Her world tilted as he approached, purpose in every step. "You'll stay here. Locked in. Say nothing. Make no sound. The walls are thick, but Varian has keen senses, even for a council lackey." With his scent in the air around her, stronger now with his agitation, Eris found herself nodding, though questions burned on her tongue. The air between them crackled with urgency and something deeper, something neither dared name. "Who is Varian?" she asked, sensing there was history there, something personal. Karen's jaw tightened. "The council's executioner." Her breath caught at the implications. Before she could respond, Karen moved closer until barely a handspan separated them. "I have to go. But first." His voice lowered, roughened at the edges. "I need to mask your scent. Your wolfsbane scent." As fire bloomed beneath her skin at his words, Eris understood what he was saying. Her voice trembled when she asked, "How?" The moment their eyes locked, she knew. His gaze dropped to her lips, hunger warring with restraint. As though fate demanded it, Karen's hand came up to cradle her face, his touch unexpectedly gentle for one so powerful. Between one breath and the next, he closed the distance, claiming her mouth with his in a kiss that started cautious, but quickly blazed into something wild and consuming. Her bones remembered this, though it had never happened before, the rightness of his touch, the way her body molded to his as if created for this purpose. In the echo of his heartbeat against hers, the mate bond pulsed stronger, more insistent. Her soul answered his wolf's call without hesitation or fear. Time stood still as Karen deepened the kiss, his hands now at her waist, pulling her firmly against the hard plane of his chest. The stillness roared around them, broken only by shared breaths and the soft sounds of discovery. When he finally pulled away, his eyes had darkened to midnight, pupils blown wide with desire and something more primal. Her thoughts spun with the intensity of what had passed between them, not just a kiss, but a sealing of something inevitable. "There," he said, his voice rough. "Now you smell like mine." The wind carried his words across her sensitized skin like a caress. Before she could respond, a horn sounded from the courtyard below, the signal that the council representatives had arrived. "I have to go," Karen said, though he made no move to release her. As the mark tingled where it lay beneath her collar, Eris nodded, suddenly afraid, not of him, but of the separation, as if some part of her already knew that what bound them together might be the very thing that would tear them apart. Her instincts surged with warning as Karen finally stepped back, his expression shifting from the man who had just kissed her senseless to the Alpha commander who led armies and struck fear into the hearts of enemies. "Don't open this door for anyone but me," he ordered, his voice leaving no room for argument. "No matter what you hear." As though the forest watched, holding its collective breath, Karen paused at the threshold, looking back at her with an intensity that stole her breath. "When I return," he said, the promise in his voice unmistakable, "we'll finish what we've started." The door closed behind him with a finality that echoed in the sudden emptiness of the room. Her chest ached with his absence, the mate bond already pulling at her to follow, to be near. But stronger than that instinct was the knowledge that discovery meant death not just for her, but for the Alpha who had chosen protection over duty. As Eris pressed her ear to the door, straining to hear the delegation's arrival in the distance, she couldn't have known that far below in the great hall, another pair of eyes would recognize what Karen now carried on his skin, the undeniable scent of wolfsbane, masked beneath the musk of desire. Nor could she have guessed that among the council's envoys waited a woman with flame-red hair and a scarred face, whose heart still carried Karen's mark from years past. A woman named Elira, who had once been promised to him as Lunar. A woman who had been presumed dead for 5 long years. A woman who would rather see him dead than claimed by another. The dead aren't supposed to walk among the living, yet there she stood, Elira Nightshade, with her flame-red hair and emerald eyes, very much alive in Shadowhold's great hall. Karen's world collapsed into a single point of disbelief as the woman he'd mourned for 5 years approached with the fluid grace he remembered all too well. And then, before the entire council delegation, she smiled, that same smile that had once been his salvation, except now it felt like the prelude to his damnation. "Hello, my love," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent hall. "Did you miss me?" From there, time seemed to fracture, reality splitting into before and after. Karen stood frozen, aware of every eye watching, assessing, judging his reaction. Council Commander Varian, a wolf with silver streaking his dark hair and cold calculation in his gaze, stepped forward, clearly enjoying the shock value of their surprise. "Alpha Thorn," Varian began, his tone falsely pleasant. "As you can see, we've brought someone back from your past. Someone who, it seems, was never actually dead." Without thinking, Karen's hand moved to his throat, to the mark that now pulsed with Eris's presence rather than the faded scar that had once connected him to Elira. The movement wasn't lost on the red-headed woman, whose smile faltered slightly. "I don't understand," Karen managed, his voice carefully controlled despite the storm raging inside him. "We found your blood. Your cloak. The evidence of a struggle." As the silence stretched between them, Elira stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her familiar scent, smoke and lavender, a scent that had once been home, but now felt wrong, discordant. "A necessary deception," she said softly, for his ears alone. "I've been working undercover for the council. The attack on your family's compound, it wasn't what you thought. I had to disappear to protect you." Her body moved on instinct, reaching for him as she had thousands of times before, her hand coming to rest on his chest. The touch that should have stirred memories of comfort instead made his skin crawl with wrongness. More disturbingly, his wolf, usually so responsive to Elira in the past, recoiled rather than welcomed her. "We have much to discuss," Varian interrupted, his sharp eyes missing nothing of their exchange. "Including why a patrol reported unusual activity near the border yesterday. A silverite omega, perhaps." The tension broke as Karen forced himself to step back from Elira, assuming the mantle of shadowfront commander rather than the stunned former lover. "My warriors intercept dozens of border crossings weekly. You'll need to be more specific." Beneath the moonlight streaming through the high windows, Varian's smile turned predatory. "Oh, I think you know exactly what I mean, Commander. Rumors have reached the council of a possible wolfsbane awakening. Surely, as the son of the man who hunted their kind to near extinction, you'd report such a finding immediately." Her instincts surged through the mate bond, and Karen could feel Eris's fear from 3 floors above, a phantom sensation that nearly made him growl aloud. Instead, he met Varian's gaze with practiced indifference. "If I'd found a wolfsbane, Commander, they'd already be dead." The lie tasted bitter on his tongue, made worse by the knowledge that every heartbeat Eris remained hidden increased the danger to them both. As the sky darkened outside, Varian nodded slowly, clearly unconvinced. "Then you won't mind if we conduct our own investigations in the area. Starting with questioning that border pack, what was it called again? Moonhaven?" A growl rose in Karen's throat before he could stop it, the mere suggestion of council members near Eris's former home setting off warning bells. "That's unnecessary. My warriors and I have the situation under control." In the echo of his voice, Elira stepped closer again, her hand coming to rest on his arm with deliberate possessiveness. "Always so protective of your territory," she murmured. "Some things never change." As fire bloomed beneath his skin at her touch, not desire, but a strange revulsion, Karen forced himself to remain still. Truth be told, the woman before him bore little resemblance to the Elira he'd loved. This Elira moved differently, spoke with harder edges. The scar that now bisected her left cheek hadn't been there before, a jagged line that pulled at her once perfect features. Her thoughts spun as implications crystallized. Had Elira truly been working for the council all along? Had her love for him been as much a deception as her death? "Commander Varian," Karen said, regaining his composure, "I invite you and your delegation to stay the night. Shadowhold's hospitality is yours. We can continue this discussion in the morning." The space between them burned with unspoken challenge as Varian considered, then nodded curtly. "A generous offer. We accept." Without warning, Elira slipped her arm through his, her familiar gesture now feeling like a shackle. "I hope my old quarters are still available," she said, her voice carrying deliberate suggestion. "For nostalgia's sake." Between one breath and the next, Karen found himself caught in an impossible situation, unable to reject Elira without raising suspicions, yet equally unable to bear her touch now that his wolf had recognized Eris as mate. Her name hung in the air, unspoken but heavy in his thoughts, as he forced a smile. "Of course. The East Wing remains as you left it." As though fate whispered warnings, he felt rather than saw Varian's heightened interest at this exchange. The commander's nostrils flared slightly, as if trying to catch an unfamiliar scent beneath Karen's own. "If you'll excuse me," Karen said, extracting himself from Elira's grip. "I'll have my steward show you to your quarters. I must attend to a security matter." Before either could respond, he strode from the hall, every step measured to appear unhurried when his entire being screamed to return to Eris, to warn her, to protect what was his. The wind carried whispers behind him, Varian's voice, low and insistent, instructing Elira, "Find out what he's hiding. He reeks of deception, and something else I can't quite place." Her breath caught as she pressed her ear against the door, straining to hear the approaching footsteps she'd recognize anywhere. Eris had paced the chamber for hours, the connection to Karen thrumming like a living thing between them, letting her feel echoes of his shock, his confusion, his growing anger. Without thinking, she flew to the door the moment his key turned in the lock. The moment their eyes locked, she knew something had fundamentally changed. "What happened?" she whispered, reaching for him instinctively. As if the world narrowed to just the two of them, Karen pulled her roughly against him, burying his face in her hair and inhaling deeply, as though her scent could banish whatever darkness he'd encountered below. Time stood still as he held her, his powerful frame almost trembling with tension. Her chest ached at the naked vulnerability he showed only to her. "Karen," she tried again, pulling back enough to see his face. "What's wrong?" A beat later, he released her, moving to secure the door before turning back, his expression a storm of emotions she couldn't fully decipher. "The woman I loved, the woman I thought died 5 years ago in an attack that killed half my pack, is downstairs," he said, each word like broken glass. "Alive. Working for the council. And she knows I'm hiding something." Her bones remembered ancient fear as the implications settled over her. Shadows danced between them as Karen paced, running a hand through his dark hair in agitation. "Elira was my intended," he continued, unable to meet Eris's eyes now. "We were to be mated on my 25th birthday. The night before the ceremony, rogues attacked our compound. I found her cloak, her blood. We mourned her. I mourned her." In the quiet that followed, Eris struggled to find words for the hollow feeling spreading through her chest. Of course there had been someone before her, someone beautiful and strong, someone worthy of an alpha, someone not cursed with poisonous blood. "You still love her," she said, the words not a question, but a resigned statement. Without warning, Karen crossed to her in 2 quick strides, taking her face between his palms with surprising gentleness. "No," he said fiercely. "That's what terrifies me. I should feel something, relief, joy, anything. But when she touched me, my wolf recoiled. All I could think about was getting back to you." As fire bloomed beneath her skin at his confession, Eris found herself leaning into his touch, the mate bond between them pulsing stronger despite the threat looming below. "The council suspects," he continued, his thumbs tracing the curve of her cheekbones. "Varian can sense something's different about me. And Elira," he broke off, conflict clear in his expression. Her voice trembled when she asked the question burning in her mind. "What will you do?" The space between them burned with unspoken possibilities as Karen's gaze dropped to her lips, hunger warring with the need to protect her. "Tonight, I'll attend their dinner. Play their games. Let Elira think there's a chance at rekindling what we had." His jaw tightened at the words. "It's the only way to keep suspicion from you." As the mark tingled at the base of her throat, Eris nodded, understanding the strategy even as her heart rebelled against it. "And tomorrow?" "Tomorrow I smuggle you out of Shadowhold," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper despite the thick walls. "There's a healer in the far mountains, Verina's mentor. If anyone knows how to manage your awakening power, it would be her." Her instincts surged with both hope and fear at his plan. The air thickened with shared understanding of what they were risking, not just their lives, but the fragile bond forming between them. As though the forest watched through the windows, bearing witness to their dangerous choice, Karen leaned forward until his forehead rested against hers. "I was sent to kill you," he murmured, the confession raw and honest. "Instead, my wolf found its mate in the one woman who could destroy everything I've built." Between them, something cracked the final barrier of hesitation. Her world tilted as Karen's mouth found hers in a kiss that started desperate and quickly blazed into something wild and claiming. Her bones remembered him, though they'd only just met the rightness of his touch, the way her body arched into his as if seeking to eliminate any space between them. The wind carried his growl as he deepened the kiss, backing her against the wall, his powerful body caging her in a way that felt like protection rather than threat. As her wolf stirred beneath her skin, responding to his dominance, Eris felt herself surrendering to a need older than reason. Her name hung in the air when he finally broke the kiss, both of them breathless. "I have to go," he said, though his body remained pressed against hers, unwilling to create distance. "If I'm not there to greet them for dinner, Varian will grow more suspicious." Time stood still in the charged space between them, the mate bond practically visible now, a golden thread connecting their wolves across bloodlines that should have remained enemies. "Be careful," she whispered, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. "She had you first. She'll want you back." A growl rose in his throat, possessive and fierce. "She never had my wolf," he said, capturing her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm that made her heart flutter. "Not the way you do. Remember that while I'm gone." As if fate demanded one final warning, a knock sounded at the door, soft but insistent. Both froze, eyes locked in sudden panic. "Karen?" Elira's voice, muffled but unmistakable, called through the thick wood. "Are you in there? We need to talk, alone." Time freezes when you're trapped between two women, one from your past who shouldn't exist, the other from your present who shouldn't be possible. Karen's eyes locked with Eris's, panic mirrored in both their gazes as Elira's knuckles rapped against the door again, more insistent this time. And then, without a word, he pressed a finger to Eris's lips and pointed toward the massive wardrobe against the far wall, his meaning crystal clear. "One moment," he called, his voice betraying none of the chaos churning within. From there, tension thrummed through the room as Eris slipped silently into the wardrobe, pulling its heavy door closed just as Karen unlocked the chamber door. The darkness enveloped her, broken only by thin slivers of light filtering through the carved wooden panels. Through these narrow openings, she could see Elira perfectly tall and lithe, with hair like living flame cascading down her back, and eyes green as forest shadows. Without warning, the redhead stepped into the room, her movements fluid and predatory. "Hiding away in your chambers when you have guests," she purred, running her fingers along the edge of a table. "That's not the Karen I remember." The space between them burned with unspoken history as Karen carefully maintained his distance. 5 years changes people, Elira. As the silence stretched between them, Elira's nostrils flared slightly, her head tilting in confusion. "You smell different." Her body moved on instinct, stepping closer to him, invading his space with practiced familiarity. "What's happened to you since I've been gone?" Her hand reached up, fingertips brushing against the mark at his throat, the same mark that now connected him to Eris. Without thinking, Karen caught her wrist, stopping her touch with barely restrained violence. "Don't." The tension broke as hurt flashed across Elira's perfect features, quickly replaced by calculation. "I see. Still angry that I disappeared." Between one breath and the next, her demeanor changed, vulnerability replacing the predator. "I had no choice, Karen. The council threatened your life, our pack. They said they'd eliminate the entire Irefong bloodline if I didn't cooperate." As fire bloomed beneath her skin with rage, Eris pressed closer to the wardrobe slats, watching as Elira's tears began to fall with suspicious perfection. The woman was good, too good, at manipulating emotions. From her hiding place, Eris could feel Karen's conflict through their newly formed bond, not desire for Elira, but confusion, suspicion, and underneath it all, a growing anger that seemed to have roots deeper than this moment. "Why now?" he demanded, his voice roughened by emotion. "After 5 years of letting me believe you were torn apart by rogues, why resurface now?" Elira's voice trembled when she answered, her performance flawless. "Because they've found her, the last wolfsbane. The council believes she's coming into her power somewhere near your territory." Her eyes fixed on his with manufactured intensity. "I couldn't let them send you into that kind of danger without warning you." Her chest ached as Eris watched Karen's face, a perfect mask of controlled indifference that revealed nothing of the truth they both knew. As though fate whispered stage directions, Elira moved closer still, tears glistening on her lashes. "They'll kill you if they suspect you're protecting her," she whispered. "The wolfsbane blood awakens fully at 21. Once that happens, she'll be able to destroy mate bonds with a touch, turn alphas against their packs, sow discord throughout our territories." As the mark tingled painfully at the base of her throat, Eris suppressed a gasp. Was that truly what she was capable of? Destroying the sacred bond between mates? Her thoughts spun with horror at the possibility. The air thickened with tension as Elira reached for Karen again, this time placing both hands on his chest. "Come back to me, Karen. We can finish what we started. Mate as we were meant to." Her voice dropped to a seductive whisper. "I still remember how your hands felt on my skin, how your wolf called to mine." Without warning, her lips pressed against his in a desperate, claiming kiss. Her instincts surged with territorial rage as Eris watched, her wolf clawing at her insides, demanding she burst from hiding and challenge this interloper. A growl rose in Karen's throat as he gripped Elira's shoulders and firmly set her away from him. Enough. The wind carried his rejection, like a physical blow, making Elira stumble back, genuine shock replacing her calculated seduction. "You don't want me anymore?" Shadows danced between them as Karen struggled visibly with what to reveal and what to conceal. 5 years is a long time, Elira. We're different people now. Her name hung in the air, charged with unspoken accusations. In the stillness that followed, Elira's expression hardened, the mask of vulnerability dissolving into something colder, more calculating. "There's someone else," she said, not a question but a statement. Her nostrils flared again as she scanned the room, eyes narrowing with suspicion. "You've found another Luna." The moment their eyes locked again, Karen's expression revealed nothing. "My personal life is no longer your concern." As though the forest watched through the windows, bearing witness to this confrontation of past and present, Elira's smile turned predatory. "Everything about you is my concern, Karen Thorne. We were blood promised by our fathers before we could walk. That bond doesn't simply disappear because I've been away." Her voice trembled with barely contained anger. "Whatever bitch you've been rutting with in my absence, she can never be what I am to you. You're true, Luna." Between them, something cracked, the thin veneer of civility giving way to raw emotion. Karen's eyes flashed with alpha dominance, his patience clearly at an end. "My father is dead, Elira. His promises died with him." His words cut like glass, precise and sharp. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have duties to attend to before dinner." The space between them burned with rejection as Elira's face contorted with rage before smoothing into a mask of cool indifference. "Very well, Commander. We'll continue this discussion later." She moved toward the door, pausing with her hand on the latch. "But know this, Varian suspects something. And I always did have a talent for sniffing out secrets." As if fate demanded one final warning, she turned back, her green eyes sweeping the room once more. "Especially yours." Time stood still as the door finally closed behind her, the lock clicking into place. Her chest ached with relief as Eris counted to 30 before emerging from her hiding place. Karen stood frozen by the window, his powerful frame rigid with tension. The moment their eyes locked, She knew something fundamental had changed. Without a word, he crossed to her, pulling her roughly against him, his mouth claiming hers in a kiss that tasted of desperation and need. Her bones remembered this, the way her body responded to his touch as if they'd been lovers for centuries rather than strangers who'd met days ago. Her world tilted as his hands tangled in her hair, angling her head to deepen the kiss. When he finally pulled away, his eyes had darkened to midnight, pupils blown wide with desire and concern. "We need to leave. Tonight, not tomorrow." Her breath caught at the urgency in his voice. What changed? Everything. His hands framed her face with surprising gentleness. "Elira isn't just here about the wolfsbane hunt. There's something else, something she's hiding. And I don't trust her reunion story for a second." As her wolf stirred beneath her skin, responding to his nearness, Eris found herself leaning into his touch. "You think she knows about me? About us?" "Not yet," he said, his thumb tracing the curve of her lower lip. "But she will." Elira always had an uncanny ability to sense deception. His expression darkened, and she was never one to share what she considered hers. The air between them crackled with shared understanding of the danger they faced. Her thoughts spun with the revelations of the past hour, both about Elira's return and about her own deadly potential. "Is it true?" she whispered, unable to meet his eyes. "What she said about wolfsbane blood. That I could destroy mate bonds." Without thinking, Karen tilted her chin up, forcing her gaze to his. "I don't know. The legends say many things about your kind, some true, some exaggerated by fear." Her voice trembled when she asked the question weighing heaviest on her heart. "What if our bond isn't real? What if it's just some twisted effect of my blood? What if I'm poisoning you without even knowing it?" A growl rose in his throat, fierce and possessive. "Do you think I can't tell the difference between true recognition and manipulation?" His grip tightened, not painfully, but with an intensity that stole her breath. "My wolf chose you, Eris. Not her. Even when she stood before me, the woman I once thought I'd die without, all I could think about was getting back to you." As though fate whispered encouragement, Eris felt her doubt receding under the weight of his certainty. The stillness roared around them, charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. "How do we leave without them noticing?" she asked, practicality asserting itself through the haze of emotion. Karen's expression shifted to one of grim determination. "There's a passage beneath Shadowhold, a tunnel system from the old wars. It leads to a cavern beyond the eastern ridge." He glanced toward the window, where twilight was giving way to true darkness. "I need to make an appearance at dinner first, to avoid suspicion. 2 hours after midnight, when the watch changes, I'll come for you." Her instincts surged with both fear and anticipation as she nodded, understanding the risk he was taking, not just for her, but for them both. As if the world narrowed to just the two of them, Karen pressed his forehead against hers, his breath mingling with her own. "Whatever happens tonight," he murmured, "remember that my wolf recognized yours across bloodlines that should have been enemies." His hands slid to her shoulders, down her arms, fingers intertwining with hers. "That doesn't happen by accident, little wolf." The wind carried his promise like a physical touch across her skin. As he reluctantly pulled away, preparing to face Elira and the council delegation below, Eris felt the mate bond between them pulse with newfound strength. But beneath the certainty of their connection lurked a darker fear, one she couldn't quite silence. If her wolfsbane blood fully awakened on her approaching birthday, would it strengthen their bond as Karen believed? Or would it destroy the only thing in her life that had ever felt like belonging? Her blood turned to poison at midnight. Eris collapsed to the floor of Karen's chambers, clutching her throat as liquid fire coursed through her veins, her screams trapped behind clenched teeth. And then, as the mantle clock struck its 12th chime, silver light burst from her skin, illuminating the room in an otherworldly glow that pulsed in time with her racing heart. The wolfsbane awakening had begun, hours too early and far too violently. From there, chaos erupted through her body as her dormant wolf clawed to the surface with such force that Eris felt her bones might shatter. Memory fragments flashed behind her eyelids, faces she'd never seen, voices she'd never heard, all speaking in a language that felt ancient yet somehow familiar. Without warning, the door to the chambers burst open. Through a haze of agony, Eris registered Karen's horrified expression as he dropped to his knees beside her convulsing form. "Eris," he growled, gathering her into his arms despite the silver light burning his skin where they touched. What happened? The tension broke as another wave of fire swept through her, forcing a whimper past her lips. Her body moved on instinct, curling against his chest as if his touch might anchor her to reality, while her blood rebelled against its own nature. "It's starting," she managed through clenched teeth. "My birthday, it's not for 2 more days. Why is this happening now?" As the silence stretched between them, understanding dawned in Karen's eyes. "The mate bond," he whispered, his voice rough with realization. "It's accelerated your awakening." Her chest ached as another pulse of silver light emanated from her skin, illuminating the worry etched across his features. Between one breath and the next, her wolf surged forward, her canines lengthening painfully as the partial shift forced itself upon her. "You need to go," she gasped, pushing weakly against his chest. "My blood, it could kill you." Without thinking, Karen tightened his grip, one hand cradling her face with surprising tenderness even as silver burns appeared on his palms. "I'm not leaving you." As though fate whispered instructions, he pressed his forehead against hers, absorbing some of her pain through their mate bond. The air thickened with his scent, pine and winter, now laced with the metallic tang of blood where her skin had burned his. A growl rose in his throat, not of pain but of fierce determination. "We're still leaving tonight. Now, before it gets worse." As fire bloomed beneath her skin once more, Eris shook her head, desperation making her voice crack. "I can't walk. Can barely move. The council will find us immediately." The moment their eyes locked, she saw something shift in Karen's expression, calculation replacing fear, the commander taking precedence over the mate. Her breath caught as he lifted her effortlessly into his arms, despite the visible agony it caused him. "Then we hide you in plain sight," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Time stood still as he carried her across the room to a trunk at the foot of his bed. Her thoughts spun with confusion as he carefully set her inside, arranging a blanket beneath her to cushion against the hard wood. "What are you doing?" she whispered, another wave of pain making her curl into herself. The wind carried his explanation like a caress against her heated skin. "More trophies," he said grimly. "Shadowfront commanders transport valuables in sealed trunks, ancient artifacts, weapons, documents. No one questions them. No one searches them." Her instincts surged with understanding as she registered his plan. "You're smuggling me out as cargo." Between them, something cracked, the weight of what they were risking settling heavily on both their shoulders. Shadows danced across his face as Karen knelt beside the trunk, his expression softening as he traced the silver-lined veins now visible beneath her skin. "I need to bind your hands and feet," he said, regret heavy in his voice. "If your wolf fully emerges during transport." Her voice trembled when she nodded, understanding the necessity. "Do it." With his scent in the air around her, stronger now with his agitation, Eris watched as Karen retrieved silver-lined restraints from his weapons cabinet. The sight sent a chill through her despite the fire in her blood. These were made for containing rogue wolves during transport, wolves considered too dangerous to allow any freedom of movement. As the mark tingled painfully at her throat, Eris extended her wrists, her silver eyes meeting his in silent agreement. Her soul answered the unspoken question in his gaze. Yes, she trusted him, even with this. Her bones remembered ancient fear as the cold metal closed around her wrists, the silver immediately burning against her increasingly sensitive skin. A small whimper escaped before she could stop it. "I'm sorry," Karen murmured, his thumb gently stroking the inside of her wrist where it wasn't touching metal. "We'll remove them the moment we're safely away." As her wolf stirred beneath her skin, fighting against the silver's suppressing effect, Eris forced herself to focus on his face rather than the pain. "How will you explain leaving in the middle of the night with council delegates present?" Her world tilted as Karen's expression hardened into something dangerous and calculating. "Urgent Border Patrol report. Rogue activity requiring immediate commander attention." The space between them burned with shared understanding of how many ways this plan could fail. Her heart skipped with fear not for herself, but for him, what the council would do if they discovered he was aiding a wolfsbane instead of killing her. "And if they insist on accompanying you?" she asked, voicing the fear they both shared. A beat later, Karen's eyes flashed with alpha authority. "They won't. Even Varian knows better than to interfere with shadowfront tactical operations." In the stillness that followed, Eris felt another surge of silver fire through her veins, this one strong enough to arch her back with its intensity. As though the forest watched through the windows, bearing witness to her transformation, Karen cursed softly and stroked her hair back from her sweat-dampened forehead. "We're out of time," he said, glancing toward the door. "The dinner's ending. They'll be looking for me soon." Her instincts surged with both fear and resolve as she nodded, forcing herself to curl smaller within the confines of the trunk. As if the world narrowed to just the two of them in this impossible moment, Karen leaned down, pressing his lips gently against hers in a kiss that tasted of promise and desperation. "Whatever happens," he whispered against her mouth, "remember that I chose this. Chose you." Her breath caught at the raw emotion in his voice. Before she could respond, he gently closed the trunk lid, plunging her into darkness broken only by the silver light pulsing from her own skin. Through the wooden barrier, she heard him slide the key into the lock, not to protect others from her, she realized, but to protect her from discovery. The trunk shifted as Karen lifted it, and despite the agony coursing through her body, Eris bit her lip to keep silent as he carried her from the chambers. The echo of his footsteps against stone corridors marked their progress through Shadowhold. Muffled voices reached her sensitive ears, guards questioning, Karen answering with the practiced authority of a man who expected and received absolute obedience. Then a voice that sent ice through her burning veins, cutting through her pain with crystal clarity. "Leaving so soon, Commander?" Elira's tone dripped with suspicion. "The night's barely begun." As her wolf stirred in territorial anger, Eris pressed closer to the trunk's wall, straining to hear Karen's response. "Border Patrol reported rogue activity near the eastern ridge," he replied, his voice betraying none of the tension she knew he must feel. "3 dead. I need to assess the situation personally." The air thickened with tension even through the wooden barrier as Elira moved closer. Eris could sense her proximity, could smell the lavender and smoke scent that clung to the woman. "And the trunk?" Elira asked, her voice hardening with distrust. Her chest ached with rising panic as silence stretched between them. Then Karen's voice, lowered to a dangerous rumble that even she could recognize as warning. "Council authority doesn't extend to Shadowfront tactical equipment, Elira. You know that." A growl rose in her throat, silent but visceral as Elira's scent moved even closer to the trunk. "You've changed, Karen." The man I knew would have invited me to accompany him, would have valued my input. Time stood still as Eris fought another wave of silver fire, biting down on her arm to stifle a scream that threatened to expose them both. Through the haze of pain, she heard Karen's response, cold as ice. The man you knew died the night he found your bloodied cloak by the northern border. His voice left no room for argument. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a patrol to lead. Without warning, the trunk shifted again as Karen resumed walking. Her thoughts spun with relief and fear in equal measure, relief that they'd passed this first obstacle, fear for the many that still lay ahead. The movement stopped again, and through the wood, she heard new voices, deeper, respectful. His elite warriors, she realized, preparing for departure. The trunk was loaded onto what felt like a wagon, the jostle sending fresh waves of agony through her transforming body. As she felt the wagon begin to move, hooves clattering against the cobblestone courtyard of Shadowhold, Eris allowed herself a small measure of hope. Perhaps they would escape after all. Perhaps the healer in the mountains could help control whatever her blood was becoming. Then, disaster. Commander. The shout carried even through the trunk's thick walls. Halt by order of the council. Her breath caught as the wagon stopped abruptly. Through the slats, she could make out Varian's voice, cold with accusation. Open the trunk, Commander Thorne. Now, between one heartbeat and the next, Eris heard Karen's boots hit the ground as he dismounted. Her bones remembered ancient fear as she sensed him standing protectively before the wagon. On what grounds, he demanded, authority crackling in every syllable. Varian's laugh held no humor. On the grounds that Elira detected wolfsbane scent on your skin. Faint, but unmistakable. A pause, heavy with threat. Open the trunk, or we open it for you. As the mark tingled with warning at her throat, Eris curled her bound hands into fists, preparing for discovery. Through her pain, one thought crystallized with terrifying clarity: she would not allow Karen to die for her. If they opened the trunk, she would use whatever power her awakening blood contained to ensure his survival, even at the cost of her own. Her instincts surged with defensive strength as she heard the scrape of weapons being drawn, Karen's warriors forming a protective circle around their commander, Varian's delegates preparing for confrontation. Without warning, a new voice cut through the tension, Verena, the old healer. Stand down, all of you, her commanding tone belying her diminutive size. Council or not, there will be no bloodshed in my territory without my consent. The air thickened with the scent of impending violence as Verena's footsteps approached the trunk. Her chest ached with dread as the healer spoke again, this time directly to Varian. The trunk contains exactly what the commander claims, tactical equipment. Specifically, medicinal herbs and potions I provided for treating wounded at the border. In the stillness that followed, Eris held her breath, another wave of transformation burning through her veins. Would Varian believe the healer's lie? Then you won't mind if we verify, Varian insisted, his voice hard with certainty. Actually, Verena replied, her tone equally unyielding, I would. Those mixtures are volatile when exposed to air. Unless you wish to explain to the High Council why half of Shadowhold is now a smoking crater, I suggest you take my word as pack healer. As though fate whispered encouragement, Eris heard Varian's frustrated exhale. This isn't over, Commander, he warned. The Council will be watching your every move. Her voice trembled with pain and hope when the wagon finally lurched forward again, carrying her away from Shadowhold, away from the Council, from Elira, from certain death if discovered. But as silver light continued to pulse through her veins, growing stronger with each passing minute, Eris wondered if they had merely exchanged one death sentence for another. The wolfsbane awakening had begun, days too early and far too violently. and no one, not even Karen with his ancient bloodline and powerful wolf, might be able to survive what she was becoming. When death comes, it should be final, not a lover's kiss against fevered skin while silver light consumes you from within. Eris floated in and out of consciousness as the wagon rumbled through the ancient forest, each jolt sending fresh waves of agony through her transforming body. And then, when the pain reached its crescendo, the strangest sensation washed over her, Karen's essence flowing into her through their mate bond, cool water on burning coals, his strength becoming hers even as it drained him. From there, time lost all meaning. The wagon stopped, the trunk opened, and Karen's face appeared above her, haggard, pale, with shadows beneath his eyes that hadn't been there hours before. Without a word, he lifted her from her wooden prison, silver burns immediately flowering across his arms where they touched her glowing skin. "You shouldn't," she managed through cracked lips. "It's killing you." The space between them burned with shared agony as he carried her through a narrow mountain path, his jaw set against the pain her mere proximity caused him. As the silence stretched between them, broken only by the crunch of his boots on rocky terrain, Eris felt tears sliding down her temples. "Why?" she whispered. "Why risk everything for someone who's poison to you?" Without thinking, Karen pulled her closer despite the visible toll it took. "Because some poisons become medicine in the right dose." His voice roughened with emotion and pain. "And some deaths are worth dying for." As fire bloomed beneath her skin once more, Eris buried her face against his chest, inhaling his scent, pine and winter, now tinged with the metallic tang of his blood where her silver light burned him. Between one heartbeat and the next, she felt her wolf surge forward, desperate to protect its mate even as it was the source of his suffering. Her body moved on instinct, struggling weakly against his hold. "Put me down," she pleaded. "Let me walk. I'm hurting you." A growl rose in his throat, primal and possessive. "We're almost there. I can make it." Without warning, he staggered, nearly dropping her as his strength faltered. Through the haze of her pain, Eris saw what the mate bond was doing, siphoning his power to fuel her transformation, the connection between them growing stronger even as it drained him of vitality. Her thoughts spun with horror as understanding dawned. This was what the legends meant: wolfsbane blood unmade alphas from within, not through malice, but through the very bond that connected them. Her chest ached with the cruel irony that her love for him, and his for her, was the very thing destroying him. As the sky darkened with approaching dawn, a small stone cottage appeared ahead, nestled against the mountainside like it had grown there naturally. The moment their eyes locked, Eris saw the relief in Karen's gaze. They had made it to their destination. Time stood still as the cottage door swung open before they reached it. An ancient woman emerged, so old her face resembled a dried apple, deep lines mapping a century of experiences. But her eyes, sharp as flint and just as hard, missed nothing as they took in the scene before her. "Cutting it rather close, aren't you, Irefong?" she cackled, her voice surprisingly strong. "Bring her inside before you both collapse." The wind carried her command with surprising authority for one so physically frail. As though the forest watched their desperate approach, the old woman's expression shifted from amusement to concern. "The bond is already killing him," she observed, reaching out gnarled fingers to touch Karen's ashen face. "Stubborn wolf. Just like your father." Her voice trembled with equal parts pain and curiosity as Eris studied the woman. "Are you the healer?" "Verina's teacher." Between them, something cracked, the woman's stern demeanor giving way to grudging approval. "I am Morwen," she said simply. "And you, Silver Eyes, are the last of a bloodline I thought long extinct." As Karen carried her across the threshold, Eris felt something strange, a shift in the air, a dampening of her power as if the cottage itself was designed to contain magic. Her bones remembered ancient rituals as Morwen directed Karen to place her on a stone slab in the center of the main room. The silver restraints, the old woman barked, already gathering vials and herbs from shelves lining the walls. Remove them. They're suppressing her wolf unnaturally, making the transformation more painful than necessary. Without warning, Karen released the locks on her wrist and ankle restraints, the relief immediate as the silver no longer burned against her skin. Her instincts surged with renewed strength, her wolf pressing closer to the surface. Shadows danced across Morwen's wizened features as she worked, grinding herbs with practiced efficiency, her muttering a constant backdrop to Eris's waves of pain. The air thickened with strange scents, bitter herbs, sweet resins, the metallic tang of what might have been blood. "You know what she is," Karen said, not a question but a statement. "What we are to each other." The moment their eyes locked, Morwen's expression softened with something like pity. "Mates who should never have found each other. Alpha and wolfsbane, hunter and hunted." She paused, adding liquid to her mixture. "A pairing that has occurred only twice before in our history, both times ending in tragedy." Her chest ached at the confirmation of what she'd feared, that their bond was not just forbidden, but fatal. As the mark tingled painfully at her throat, Eris reached for Karen, needing the comfort of his touch despite knowing it hurt him. "There must be a way," she whispered, another wave of silver light pulsing from her veins. A beat later, Morwen approached with a stone cup filled with viscous liquid that smelled of earth and copper. "Drink," she ordered. "All of it." As fire bloomed beneath her skin, Eris complied, gagging at the bitter taste that coated her tongue like ash. Without thinking, Karen reached for her hand, ignoring the burns that immediately flowered across his palm. "Will it stop the transformation?" he asked, hope threading through his exhausted voice. The air between them burned with Morwen's silent assessment. "No," she said finally. "Nothing can stop what's begun. The wolfsbane power awakens fully at 21 or earlier when a mate bond accelerates it." Her voice trembled when she elaborated, "But this will help her control it. Channel it. Without this elixir, her blood would burn through her veins until she was nothing but silver light and smoke." The stillness roared around them as Eris felt the potion working its way through her system, not dampening her power, but somehow containing it, directing it. Her world tilted as Morwen turned her attention to Karen, studying his silver burns with clinical detachment. "And what of him?" Eris asked, fear making her voice crack. "My blood is killing him through our bond." Without warning, Morwen's ancient hand shot out, grabbing Karen's wrist with surprising strength. She turned his arm, examining the silvery burns that traced the path of his veins like lightning branches. "There is a way," she said slowly, her eyes darting between them. "But the price is high, too high for most." Her bones remembered ancient rituals as Morwen released Karen and moved to a carved chest in the corner of the room. The echo of her voice faded as she rummaged through its contents, finally extracting a small obsidian knife with runes etched along its blade. "What price?" Karen demanded, his stance protective despite his weakened state. Morwen's expression revealed nothing as she returned, placing the knife on a small table between them. "Your wolf," she said simply. "To save your life, to maintain the mate bond without it destroying you, you must give up your alpha essence." In the quiet that followed, Eris felt her heart stutter painfully. Her thoughts spun with the implications. What Morwen was suggesting was unthinkable. An alpha without his wolf was no alpha at all. Stripped of rank, power, position. Everything Karen had trained for, fought for, bled for. "No," she gasped, pushing herself upright despite the pain. "There must be another way. I won't let him sacrifice." Quiet, Girl, Morwen interrupted, her tone brooking no argument. The choice isn't yours. As though fate whispered instructions only he could hear, Karen moved to stand before the ancient healer, his expression resolute despite the silver poison now clearly visible beneath his skin. How? He asked simply. The wind carried his question like a sentence of execution. Morwen's eyes gleamed with approval at his directness. The ritual is ancient, from before the Great Divide when wolves and humans walked separate paths. She indicated the obsidian blade. With this, you will offer your alpha essence to the moon goddess. Not in death, but in transformation. Her instincts surged with desperation as Eris struggled to stand, another wave of silver light pulsing from her veins. Karen, don't. Please. Without your wolf, the council will strip you of everything, your command, your territory, your birthright. The space between them burned with unspoken emotion as Karen turned to her, his blue eyes fierce, despite the pain evident in them. And with my wolf, I'll be dead within days. His voice softened. What good is rank or territory without you beside me? Her breath caught at the raw emotion in his declaration. As her wolf stirred beneath her skin, somehow soothed by Morwen's elixir, Eris felt tears tracking down her cheeks. You can't, she whispered. I'm not worth. You are, he interrupted, crossing to her with purpose. To me, you are. Between them, something cracked the last barrier of hesitation. Her world tilted as Karen pressed his forehead against hers, sharing breath despite the pain it caused him. I've spent my life being what others needed, son, soldier, alpha, commander. His hands framed her face, ignoring the silver burns blooming across his palms. For once, I choose my own path. I choose you. As if fate demanded it, Morwen's voice cut through their moment, impatient and urgent. Decide quickly. The poison spreads. Soon it will reach his heart, and not even the goddess herself could save him then. Time stood still as Karen pulled back just enough to meet Eris's gaze. Her chest ached with the weight of his sacrifice, a sacrifice she had never asked for, never wanted, yet one he seemed determined to make. Let me do this, he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Let me choose us. Without warning, he turned back to Morwen, his decision made. What must I do? The ancient healer gestured toward a circle etched into the stone floor, symbols Eris didn't recognize carved around its perimeter. Stand there. The ritual requires blood and bone, sacrifice and surrender. As though the forest watched through the windows, bearing witness to a ceremony not performed in centuries, Morwen began gathering ingredients with practiced efficiency, a bowl of what looked like liquid mercury, bundles of herbs tied with red thread, a small vial of viscous black fluid. In the stillness that followed, Eris felt another pulse of silver light emanate from her skin, weaker now, more controlled thanks to Morwen's elixir. Her name hung in the air, unspoken but heavy in Karen's thoughts as he stepped into the ritual circle. Will he survive? She asked Morwen, her voice barely above a whisper. The air thickened with tension as the old woman glanced up from her preparations. If his desire to live as a man is stronger than his attachment to life as a wolf, she replied cryptically. The wolf essence won't be destroyed, merely relocated. Her breath caught at the implications. Relocated where? Morwen's smile revealed teeth still surprisingly strong for one so ancient. Where do you think, Silver Eyes? The wolf essence requires a host, someone strong enough to contain it without being consumed. As the mark tingled at the base of her throat, understanding dawned with terrifying clarity. Me, Eris whispered. His wolf would come to me. As fire bloomed beneath her skin at this revelation, she saw Karen's expression change, surprise giving way to determination. Will it hurt her? He demanded of Morwen. The old woman's laugh held no humor. Less than what's already happening. Her wolfsbane blood is awakening. Adding your wolf essence will either destroy her entirely. She paused, her ancient eyes fixing on the matching marks at their throats, or create something new, something unprecedented. Her bones remembered ancient fear as Morwen handed the obsidian knife to Karen. With his scent in the air around her, pine and winter, steel and resolve, Eris felt her own decision crystallize. If he was brave enough to sacrifice his wolf for her, she would be brave enough to accept the consequences. "I'm ready," she said, pushing herself to her feet and moving to the edge of the ritual circle. "Whatever happens, we face it together." The moment their eyes locked, something passed between them, deeper than words, more binding than vows. As though the forest watched, the moon listened, and fate itself held its breath, Karen raised the obsidian blade and spoke the words Morwen whispered to him. "I offer what makes me wolf to save what makes me man. I surrender power to keep love. I choose her over everything." And with that declaration echoing through the ancient cottage, he drew the blade across his palm, allowing his blood, now streaked with silver from her influence, to fall upon the stone circle beneath his feet. The ritual had begun. Light isn't supposed to have weight, yet as Karen's wolf essence left his body, it manifested as luminous silver threads that hung suspended in the air between them, simultaneously weightless and heavier than mountains. And then, like lightning seeking the path of least resistance, those threads surged toward Eris with such force that the impact drove her to her knees, her scream merging with Karen's as their very souls were simultaneously torn apart and rewoven into something entirely new. From there, the world dissolved into pure sensation. Eris felt herself splitting open, her identity fracturing as Karen's wolf merged with her awakening wolfsbane blood. His memories flooded her consciousness, childhood training sessions with his father, his first kill during the border wars, the weight of command settling on his shoulders when he was barely 20, the joy of running through moonlit forests with his pack, the bone-deep loneliness of leadership. Without warning, the silver light enveloping them both flared with blinding intensity, forcing Morwen to shield her ancient eyes. The tension broke as Karen collapsed inside the ritual circle, his blood no longer threaded with silver, but running pure red against the stone floor. "Karen!" Eris called out, her voice unrecognizable, deeper, layered with power that hadn't been there moments before. Her body moved on instinct toward him, only to be blocked by Morwen's outstretched arm. "Wait," the healer commanded. "The ritual isn't complete." As the silence stretched between them, Eris felt something unfamiliar stirring within, not just her own wolf, which had been dormant for so long, but a second presence. Stronger, more dominant. Karen's alpha wolf, now somehow coexisting alongside her own. Her chest ached with fear as she watched Karen's still form, his chest barely rising with shallow breaths. "Is he?" Living, Morwen confirmed, her wizened face revealing nothing. But changed. Between one breath and the next, Karen's eyes flew open. Still that same striking blue, but different now. Purely human. The alpha dominance that had always radiated from him was gone, leaving behind something else entirely. Something no less powerful, but fundamentally altered. As though fate whispered encouragement, Eris broke free of Morwen's restraining arm and rushed to Karen's side, dropping to her knees beside him. The space between them burned with new awareness as their eyes met. "I can feel you," she whispered, wonderment replacing fear. "Inside me, you're wolf. But you're still." "Here," he finished, his voice rough with exertion as he pushed himself to a sitting position. "Different, but here." Her voice trembled when she reached for him, half expecting her touch to burn him as it had before. Instead, when her fingers met his skin, there was only warmth, no silver light, no searing pain. A growl rose in her throat, not her own, but his wolf responding through her. The sound startled them both, Karen's eyes widening with recognition. "That's—" he began, a complex mixture of emotions crossing his face. "Yours," she confirmed, feeling the power of his alpha essence settling alongside her own wolf. "He's still alive. Just with me now." Without thinking, Karen pressed his palm against her cheek, his touch reverent, exploring. "The silver veins are gone," he observed. "Your skin's back to normal." The wind carried his words like a caress across her face. As her wolf stirred beneath her skin, now accompanied by his, the two somehow coexisting rather than fighting for dominance, Eris realized the burning pain of her awakening had vanished completely. "The transformation is complete," Morwen announced, satisfaction evident in her ancient voice. "Faster than I expected. 2 wolves in one body. The wolfsbane and the Irefang." Her bones remembered ancient rituals as Morwen helped them both to their feet, her strength belying her frail appearance. "What you've created is something unprecedented. Neither pure wolfsbane nor pure alpha, but a blending that nullifies the destructive aspects of both." As fire bloomed beneath her skin, not pain now, but power thrumming through her veins, Eris turned to face Karen fully. "And you? How do you feel without your wolf?" The moment their eyes locked, she saw something shift in his expression, grief giving way to wonder. Lighter, he admitted. "Like I've set down a burden I've carried so long I forgot it wasn't part of me." His fingers intertwined with hers, but also connected. "To you. I can feel my wolf through our bond, just not within me." Her thoughts spun with implications as Morwen circled them, her sharp gaze assessing. "The ritual worked better than I dared hope," the old woman muttered. "The wolfsbane blood has stabilized. The alpha essence has found a new host. And the mate bond is stronger than ever," Karen finished, his grip on Eris's hand tightening. As the sky darkened outside the small windows of the cottage, Morwen's expression grew serious. "What happens now is your choice. But know this, the council will never stop hunting you both. What you've become," she nodded toward Eris, "and what you've sacrificed," her gaze shifted to Karen, "represents a threat to everything they believe about power and bloodlines." Time stood still as they absorbed this truth. Her chest ached not with pain, but with the weight of their uncertain future. As though the forest watched through the windows, bearing witness to this moment of decision, Karen's expression hardened with resolve. "Let them come," he said simply. "We'll be ready." Without warning, the cottage door burst open, cold mountain air swirling into the warm space. Her instincts surged with protective fury as Eris spun toward the intrusion, both her wolf and Karen's rising to defensive readiness within her. A beat later, she recognized the figure silhouetted in the doorway, Verena, Morwen's former student, looking haggard and travel-worn. "They're coming," she announced without preamble. "Varian, Elira, and a contingent of council enforcers. They're an hour behind me at most." Her name hung in the air like a death sentence as Eris processed this news. Without thinking, she turned to Karen, expecting to see fear or resignation in his eyes. Instead, she found calm determination. "We need to leave," he said, already looking for weapons, for supplies. "Find somewhere to regroup." The space between them burned with unasked questions as Verena stepped fully into the cottage, her gaze fixing on Karen with evident confusion. "Your wolf," she said, her eyes widening as understanding dawned. "You actually did it." Her attention shifted to Eris, reassessing. "And you survived it." As her wolf stirred beneath her skin, both her own and Karen's responding to the healer's scrutiny, Eris straightened her spine. "More than survived," she corrected. "We're stronger together." In the quiet that followed, Morwen's crackling laugh broke the tension. Indeed you are, Silver Eyes. Indeed you are. Her voice trembled when she asked the question that had been forming since the ritual completed. What exactly am I now? Not pure wolfsbane, not pure alpha. Morwen's smile revealed teeth still sharp despite her advanced age. You're the first of a new bloodline. One with the power to either heal the divisions between our kind or tear them apart completely. Her ancient eyes gleamed with something like hope. The choice is yours. Between them, something cracked, the weight of possibility settling on their shoulders. As if the world narrowed to just this moment, this choice, Karen moved to stand beside Eris, their shoulders touching in silent solidarity. Whatever happens, he said, his voice soft yet certain, we face it together. The wind carried his promise like a physical touch across her skin. Verena cleared her throat, practical concerns asserting themselves. There's an abandoned temple 3 valleys east, she said, already gathering supplies into a pack. Sacred ground. The council enforcers won't dare violate it while the moon is full. Her instincts surged with both fear and determination as Eris nodded, already calculating their chances. With Karen's tactical knowledge and her newly amplified abilities, they might just survive long enough to figure out what came next. As though fate whispered instructions, Morwen pressed a small stone vial into Eris's hand. Blood magic, the ancient healer explained. If you're cornered, drink this. It will amplify your abilities temporarily, enough to fight your way out or run. Her chest ached with gratitude as she accepted the vial, tucking it securely into her pocket. Shadows danced between them as Karen gathered what weapons Morwen could provide. A silver-edged dagger, a bow with arrows tipped in some dark substance Eris didn't recognize. Time stood still as they prepared for departure, the urgency of their situation lending speed to their movements. Yet despite the danger closing in, Eris felt something unfamiliar blooming within her chest, hope. For the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. She had Karen. She had her wolf. And now, improbably, she had his wolf too. The moment their eyes locked again across the small cottage, something passed between them, deeper than words, more binding than vows. A promise. A future. A choice made and remade with every breath. Ready, he asked, extending his hand. As fire bloomed beneath her skin, the pleasant warmth of power rather than the burning pain of before, Eris nodded, taking his hand in hers. Ready. As though the forest watched, the moon listened, and fate itself held its breath, they stepped out into the mountain night together, not Alpha and Omega, not hunter and hunted, but something new, something unprecedented, something chosen rather than destined. 6 months later, the border settlement of Haven didn't exist on any council maps. Nestled in a hidden valley where 3 territories met, it had grown from a handful of tents to a thriving community of over 100 wolves in less than half a year. And then, as the summer sun crested over the eastern ridge, illuminating the settlement in golden light, a familiar scent carried on the morning breeze, alpha and wolf and wilderness. Without thinking, Eris emerged from the small cabin she shared with Karen, her silver eyes scanning the tree line. Her body moved on instinct, both wolves within her rising to alertness as a group of strangers appeared at the forest's edge, ragged, wounded, clearly fleeing something or someone. Karen, she called, not taking her eyes off the newcomers. As the silence stretched between them and the strangers, Karen appeared beside her, no longer the imposing alpha commander of Shadowfront, but something different, leaner, his hair longer, his movements more fluid. The loss of his wolf had changed him physically, but the authority in his bearing remained undiminished. Refugees, he observed, already moving toward them with purpose. Her breath caught as she followed, feeling both wolves inside her assess the newcomers, a mix of ranks and bloodlines, some clearly injured, all bearing the haunted look of those who had seen too much. The leader of the group, a tall woman with a jagged scar running from temple to jaw, stepped forward cautiously. "We seek sanctuary," she said, her voice carrying the refined accent of the inner territories. "The council's purges have reached our pack. Anyone suspected of harboring rogues or—" Her eyes fixed on Eris with dawning recognition, sympathizing with forbidden bloodlines, is being executed. Between one heartbeat and the next, Eris felt Karen's hand find hers, squeezing gently, support, solidarity, love conveyed in the simplest of touches. "You found it," Eris told the woman, stepping forward. "Sanctuary. Haven accepts all who seek a new way." The air thickened with tension as the newcomers registered what stood before them, a woman with silver eyes housing two wolves, and a man who had given up his alpha essence yet somehow radiated more true authority than any council enforcer. "You're her," the scarred woman whispered. "The wolfsbane who stole an alpha's heart. The one they call the cradle." As her wolf stirred beneath her skin correction, wolves, plural, Eris smiled. "I'm Eris Valebrook. This is Karen Thorne. And this," she gestured to the settlement spreading out behind them, "is what happens when wolves choose love over power." Without warning, the scarred woman dropped to one knee, the rest of her group following suit. The stories were true, she said, awe evident in her voice. A new bloodline. A new way. Her bones remembered ancient rituals as Karen stepped forward, gently raising the woman to her feet. "We don't kneel here," he said firmly. "Haven has no alphas, no omegas, no rankings. Only wolves seeking to live freely." The moment their eyes locked, the woman nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her expression. "The heart alpha," she murmured. "That's what they're calling you beyond the borders. The alpha who rules through love rather than dominance." As if fate demanded one final affirmation, Eris felt both wolves within her respond to the title, not with pride or arrogance, but with rightness. Through the mate bond, she sensed Karen's reaction, surprise, humility, and underneath it all, certainty that they had chosen correctly. The wind carried whispers of change as they led the newcomers into Haven, where rogues and outcasts, bond broken and cursed alike, had found refuge. Where a new way of living, of loving, was taking root despite the council's best efforts to eradicate it. And as the morning sun illuminated their faces, Karen turned to Eris, his expression soft with wonder even after 6 months together. "Worth it?" he asked quietly, the question encompassing everything: his sacrifice, their flight, the dangerous life they now led as leaders of a growing resistance. Her chest ached not with pain, but with fullness as she reached up, pressing her palm against the mark at his throat that mirrored her own. "Every moment," she whispered. "Every breath." Between them, something blossomed, not just their bond, but the future they were building together. A future where bloodlines didn't determine destiny, where mates chose each other rather than being assigned by councils or tradition, where even a wolf who had once been sent to kill his mate could find redemption in her arms. And though his wolf now lived within her, in the quiet moments between battles and building and planning for the inevitable confrontation with the council, Karen swore he could still hear it whisper through their bond, the word that had started everything. "Mine."